Okay, we're recording and we are working on advanced Active Directory stuff tonight. So this is probably going to be another one of those in the corner questions. So stop me if you have questions. Okay, so multi-domain environment configurations. So in large organizations, it may be necessary to build an AD structure composed of several domains, multiple trees, and possibly even a few forests. Usually in that big of a structure, you're not going to be the only IT person or networking person in there. So find someone to mentor you is my advice. For a single sign-on domain environment, most small, medium business choose a single domain for the following reasons: simplicity, lower costs, easier management, and easier access to resources. For multi-domain environments, the reasons for that are using more than one domain makes sense or is even necessary in the following circumstances. You need for differing account policies, different name identities, replication control, the need for internal versus external domains, or if you have very tight security, like say you have an R&D department and you don't want anything from them mixing with anyone else. So you have to put like really tight security on their stuff versus the rest of things. Sometimes you'll see where you have really big ones where they have one domain that is for just an entire department if they have a lot of security. So adding a subdomain. A subdomain maintains a common naming structure with the forest root. Remember us talking about the forest root. Third level domain name is different. So here's your example: forest root domain. Remember us using these csmtech.local. Subdomain created. They're using by geography. This is US CSMTech local, or business unit publishing.csmtech.local. When creating a subdomain, consider the following: what server will be the first CD for the new domain? What are the names of the domain and the new DC? What Active Directory related roles will the new DC fill? In which site will the new DC be located? Are you going to install a second DC for the subdomain immediately? And who will administer the new domain? I really hope that you have two child domains, and subdomains are basically the same thing. I mean, because you can't be a subdomain without being a child domain of that. So yes, that is a good question. Adding trees to an existing forest. I know there are all sorts of deforestation and all sorts of comments. I'm probably going to be getting over this, but when two companies merge or a large company splits into separate business units, a multi-tree structure makes sense. Adding a tree to an existing AD forest isn't much different from adding a subdomain to an existing tree. You need a name for the new tree that includes a top level and second level domain name. So here's your example of, I know they look like pyramids, but forest of two trees. So you have your csmtech.local and csmpub.local. And there's your parent domain. So you were talking about the subdomains and child domains. Here's your answer: child domain / subdomain. There you go. And as you can see, these subdomains are based off of location in this example. Configuring an alternative UPN suffix. User accounts are assigned a UPN suffix that's the same as the domain name. So example, there's your J Smith for John Smith at csmtech.local, and UPN, that's the csmtech.local, that's your UPN suffix. In multi-domains, you might want to configure multiple UPN suffixes to make logon easier. And then there are some directions in the text so you can see how to do alternative UPN suffixes. Now, I
Quick
have
question.
oh, go ahead.
I guarantee that it's like sitting in the back of my head, but UPN is what I literally I'm drawing a blank.
It's universal. Hold on. Universal something name. Hold on. I'm sorry, user principal name. So that's your prefix, which is your account name, and your suffix, which is your DNS name. So UPN is user principal name. For some reason, I was thinking it was a different one.
Okay, thank you.
United Paramount Network, that's another one. What I think what they're talking about here is the user principal name, and by that they just mean that's the name, the principal name by which they're going to use for your login name. So the suffix is the thing that you see after the at on this. Now, I was going to say here, I have seen, because you can do multiple UPN suffixes, and you can also do a thing that like basically points them back to the same, so that everything goes to the same username, even though they have different UPN suffix. So that is sorry, I just saw that brown hat hacker joke. That's bad, but funny. So with UPN suffixes, it is possible in multi-domains, if you have somebody that's so that you want to make it easier. If you have multiple ones, you can actually direct them so that on their side they don't see all of the UPN suffixes. They just see one, and you can just basically point everything to the right direction. Okay, configuring multi-forest environments. All domains in a forest share the following: a single schema, forest-wide administrative accounts, operations masters, global catalog, trust between domains, replication between domains. You might need an additional forest for the following reasons: schema changes, security, or corporate mergers. Usually the bottom two are what I've seen. To create a forest, choose the option to create a domain in a new forest when promoting a server to a domain controller. Active Directory trusts. So remember we talking about trust relationships? So trust relationship defines whether and how security principals from one domain can access network resources in another domain. This is established automatically between all domains in the forest. AD trusts can exist between domains and between forests. Users can access resources across domains without having to log on more than once, as long as the user has permission to access that resource. A user account needs to exist in only one domain. Trust nothing. Yes, that's kind of cybersecurity in general. One-way and two-way trusts. So a one-way trust exists when one domain trusts another, but the reverse is not true. So domain A trusts domain B, but domain B does not trust domain A. Two-way trust. Users from both domains can be given access to resources in the other domain. So in that case, A and B both trust each other, and you can go back and forth on that. Automatic trusts configured between domains in an Active Directory forest are two-way trusts. Both one-way and two-way trusts can be transitive or non-transitive. So here's an example of a trust relationship. And this one's your one-way, because otherwise you have the arrow going the other way.
Quick question on like the one way. Would that be like what's rolling or puttering around in my head as I'm trying to shake off the dust from the week last week is I'm imagining like a business relationship. So what keeps popping into my head is, or a temporary business relationship. So something like a you give someone temporary access to your network to do not necessarily penetration testing, but testing or something like that, and then or I can't really explain it better.
Probably the easiest way to think of this is intranet and internet. If you think about domain A being the intranet, they can see everything out, including the internet, but the internet wouldn't be, which would be domain B, wouldn't be able to get back into the intranet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's way better than what I was thinking.
Okay, that's just the easiest way that I've had to think about this particular type of trust. Okay, transitive trusts. So a transitive trust is if a domain A trusts domain B and domain B trusts domain C, then domain A trusts domain C. And it's just using transitive properties to infer that domain A trusts domain C. Automatic trust relationships created between domains in a forest are transitive two-way trusts. Follow the domain parent-child relationship in a tree. Referral is the process of a DC in one domain informing the DC in another domain. If that doesn't have information, if it doesn't have information about a requested object, requesting DC is referred to another DC until it reaches the domain holding the object. So we've kind of talked a little bit about that. A referral is just, if I like to think about a referral as like job referrals. If you've got a referral from someone, then that means they know the information. Well, in this case, if this DC is looking for something, they get referred on down the line until they find the person that has the information. Is how I look at that one. And a transitive trust, do you guys understand what transitive relationships are? Does that one make sense, is what I'm asking? Is there anyone that does not understand that one?
I trust my friend, and he's friends with this guy. The guy might be sketchy, but I trust my friend because he's smart.
Yeah, there you go. It's smart. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very basic. Yep, exactly. Yeah, in which case that would not be a transitive trust. Yeah. Okay, so here's an example of two-way transitive trusts. Just look for the little arrows and you'll see what it's doing. Okay, shortcut trusts. These are configured manually between domains in the same forests to bypass normal referral process. Shortcut trusts are transitive and can be configured as one-way or two-way. Configured when a user account often needs to access resources and domains several referrals away. So if you know that, we'll just use letters. Let's say that we've got something in site A that needs to get all the information all the way out from a site Z, and we know it's going to have to happen a lot. Well, rather than have to go jump every single time, you put in your shortcut and go, okay, this is what you need to do. It's just exactly what it says it is. It is a shortcut to cut down the amount of processing time. Can be used only between domains in the same forest. If access to a different forest is needed, use a forest trust or an external trust. So here is your example of what your two-way shortcut trust looks like. All right, forest trusts. A forest trust provides a one-way or two-way trust between forests, created between the forest root domains of an AD forest running Windows Server 2003 or later. A forest trust is transitive. All domains in one forest trust all domains in other forests. Now think of that as, they're all part of the same forest of the same root. So as long as they're forests of the same root, they have transitive trust. The trust isn't transitive from one forest to another. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. What I mean by that is domains in the forest. Sorry, I'm just going to end up confusing you guys. So the domain, think of that as like the trees in the forest, the domains. So everything in that forest is okay, and then you get outside of there and it gets confused.
So quick question.
Already confused am I? Sorry, yeah, I didn't mean to confuse you.
So for the forest trust, that was what back when you showed us that video on hacking, that was what they were using to pivot, correct? They got one domain to trust them, or they got access basically to one domain, and then they pivoted from there into the rest of them.
They pivoted inside of the domain to another. They were inside the domain. I believe all of that was inside the same domain. They were just pivoting from a lower trusted resources within the domain to something with higher higher. But they did what was some reason I can't remember the name of it, but basically it boosts your privileges so that you can get up to where you would be like an administrator level, and then turn around within the same domain but a different item and access something you're not supposed to be having access to. So it's similar, but it's, instead of being outside of forests, it was all within one domain instead of multiple domains.
Okay.
But you can do that as long as you are within the same root, and the accounts that you are working between have access to the items. That the key on that is, if as long as they have access to the items, you can't go from like a one forest to another, like a high security thing. It's incredibly difficult. I won't say can't, because someone out there is going to prove me wrong at some point, but it's very difficult. But if it's in the same route, what I like to think of is if it's in the same domain, it's easier, and think of it as concentric circles. So if it's in the same domain, it's easier, and the further out you get on those circles, the harder it becomes to pivot. That doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means you need more resources, more time, and sometimes you need more information. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Okay, so you have forest A, B, and C, and you can see the domain on those. Okay. External and realm trusts. I don't know why, but that always reminds me of D&D. External trust is a one or two-way non-transitive trust between two domains that aren't in the same forest. Generally used in the following circumstances: to create a trust between two domains in different forests, to create a trust with a Windows 2000 or Windows NT domain. What they're trying to say there is that it's a legacy one that they have to use older methods on, because the does not support newer ones. A realm trust is used to integrate users of other operating systems into a Windows domain or forest. So Linux, Unix, things like that. You're trying to use the realm trust in order to allow them to use the Windows domain or forest. Configuring Active Directory trusts. DNS must be configured so that the FQDNs of all participating domains can be resolved. This might require AD, integrated forest-wide replications of zones, conditional forwarders, or stub zones. Before creating a trust, make sure you can resolve the FQDNs of the domains by using NSLookup or a similar tool. NSLookup is kind of industry standard, but unless there are some like subscription tools that you see for bigger stuff, but a lot of times they use NSLookup. Okay, configuring shortcut trusts. Usually you create a shortcut trust between subdomains of two domain trees to create your shortcut trust. Open Active Directory domains and trusts, open the properties dialog box of the domain node, and then you just go through the steps outlined in your new trust wizard. A lot of these will be follow the steps in the new trust or whatever wizard. So here's your example. And you see your domain names. And then you can click on that new trust and walk through. And here is an example of forest root local sub1 forest. And this is just an example of what that is, of a forest with automatic trusts and a shortcut trust. And if you look down here, it shows the little dashed lines are they're showing the shortcut trust. Okay, configuring forest trusts. Configuring forest trust is similar to creating a shortcut trust. Main consideration is making sure DNS is configured correctly in both forest root domains. The three most common ways to configure a DNS for forest trust are conditional forwarders, stub zones, secondary zones. You can also configure a DNS server to act as root server for the DNS namespace of both servers. External and realm trusts are configured in Active Directory domains and trusts. External trust involves Windows domains on both sides of the trust. A realm trust is created between Windows domain and a non-Windows OS running Kerberos version 5 or later. External trust is not transitive and is nearly identical to creating a forest trust. When creating a realm trust, the main consideration should be whether or not it should be transitive. Configuring trust properties. So the properties dialog box of a forest trust contain 3 tabs. The general tab provides the options. The other domains support Kerberos AES encryption, direction of trust, transitive of trust, validate, and save as. The name suffix routing tab, which allows you to control which name suffixes used by the trusted forest are routed for authentication, and the authentication tab, same options as outgoing trust authentication level window. Okay, so this is what this looks like, and those are just those tabs that we just went over. And here is what your next one looks like. SID filtering. The SID history attribute can be used for nefarious purposes to gain administrative privileges in a trusting forest. To counter the security risk, Windows provides a feature called SID filtering. SID filtering causes the trusting domain to ignore any SIDs that aren't from the trusted domain. SID filtering is enabled by default on external trusts, but is disabled on forest trusts. Upgrading domains and forests. Windows enables administrators to configure functional levels on new domain controllers to maintain backwards compatibility. Domain and forest functional levels are specific to domain controllers. Member servers and workstation computers can be domain members of domains and forests running at any functional level. And then we're on to forest functional levels. So forest functional level determines the features of Active Directory that have forest-wide implications and which server operating systems are supported on domain controllers in the forest. Windows Server 2016 domain controller supports the following function levels. So it starts at 2008 R2, 2012 R2, and 2016. Forest functional levels can be raised from an earlier version to a newer version. And remember, you can go from old to new, but not the other way around. Windows 2000 native supports all the default features of an Active Directory forest. Functional level is considered the baseline. Windows Server 2003 level supports features of 2000 and adds forest trusts, knowledge consistency checker, linked value replication, rename a domain, read-only domain controller, RODC deployment, and some other additional features. Windows Server 2008, not forest-wide features were added to the functional level. 2008 R2 has all features of Server 2003 and adds Active Directory recycle bin. So that's why you kept seeing it say, this cannot be turned on unless you have 2008 R2 or higher. That's why. Windows Server 2012, no forest-wide features were added to this functional level. R2, no new forest-wide features, but all DCs must be running Windows Server 2012 R2 domain functional level. And then it's 2016 feature added. The Windows Server 2016 forest functional level is privileged access management. Group membership expiration allows you to add an account to group temporarily.
What would you recommend as far as like the server levels, like the latest anyone uses right now?
I think 2022 is the most recent version.
Well, yeah, but most companies, unless they're actually like a big company, won't spring for the newest version.
2019, I think, is the one that has the most patches and service, and isn't the brand newest one out on the block, but still is. I mean, you can use 2016. You should be at least using 2016, as far as, in my personal opinion. But I have still seen a lot of places that are using 2012. And no way, shape, or form should you be using anything under 2012. But ideally, you should, if you want to go, don't want to go like brand new, I would say 2019.
Okay, thank you.
Because it's been out long enough, and it doesn't have any huge bugs that I'm aware of that haven't been patched. And so, anything that comes out always has issues and gets patches, but 2019 has been out long enough. I think it's pretty well trusted. Yeah, what economy? Yeah, funny. Domain functional levels. Windows Server 2016 supports 5 domain functional levels, have the same names as forest functional levels. Domain controller can't be configured to run at a lower functional level than the forest functional level. You can raise it, but not lower. After a domain's functional level has been raised, no DCs running earlier versions of the operating system can be installed in the domain. So keep that in mind. If you raise it and then go, oops, I don't want to, you're going to be in trouble. So make sure that it is where you want your baseline to be before you raise it. Because if you have, like, say, some sort of specialty software that can only run 2012, then, be careful going up to 2016 because you're SOL on that. Windows Native 2000 supported only by Windows 2000 anyway. So I'm going to kind of breeze through these because you can read these on there. But this upgrades Windows NT domain system, universal groups, group nested, groups conversions, security identifier, that's the SID history. 2003, domain controller renaming, logon, timestamp, replication, selective authentication, user and computer container redirection, and add some more additional features. 2008 and 2008 R2, you have your DFS replication, fine-grained password policy, interactive logon information, and then you have your AES support. And then R2 added the automatic service principal name management and authentication mechanism assurance. 2012 supports everything previously, but it also added some Kerberos improvements. R2 added more authentication improvements for protected users, authentication policies, and policy silos. And 2016 was just There's not really any new domain function levels, but you just have to remember everything has to be running that if you have it. Raising domain and forest functional levels. Functional levels can be set when a server is promoted to a DC, or they can be raised manually on the DC. Before raising the functional levels, ensure the DC meet the requirements for the functional level you want. So just like if you try to add a video game to a computer that cannot function with that, cannot run that on there, same thing happens if you try to raise the functional levels and it doesn't meet the minimum requirements for the functional level you want. A whole big mess. Yep.
My question is, will it be like the game where it just won't do anything? Or will it be our worst nightmare where you're not paying attention and you mess it up and raise it, then you're kind of bored?
The latter. I've seen sometimes you're really lucky and it says, no, you can't do that. But most of the time it does kind of like a partial raise and then stops working. So you get kind of like a half and half. And if you're very lucky, it's on a virtual server and you get to roll everything back. But if you're not lucky, it's bricked. Well, maybe not bricked, but you spend a lot of time having to fix it. Raising the domain functional level affects all the DCs in the domain. You only need to raise the functional level on one DC and all others reflect the change. Right-click the domain node in AD domains and trusts. Click Raise Domain Functional Level. If domain is already operating at the highest level, you can't change it. So that is nice. If it's like at where it can, as high as it can go, then you can't really try to force it any higher. Raising forest functional levels. You must be a member of the enterprise admins group to raise the forest functional level. The schema FSMO role must be available. If raising both forest and domain functional level, you must raise the domain level first. Right-click AD domains and trust node and click Raise Forest Functional Level. So here's your example. Domain functional server level 12. So basically it's saying what it said there before. You can't raise it to a lower level. It will just go. But if you do from 2012 to 2016, it'll say, okay. Adding domain controllers to an existing domain. Before you can install a DC running a newer Windows Server version and an existing forest with a lower functional level, you must prepare existing DCs. Use AD-prep-exe command line program. It's built into the Windows Server 2012 R2 and later active domain service role installation process, located in the support AdPrep folder on Windows installation disk, or ISO, whatever you're using. SRB record registration. DC advertises themselves by registering service SRB records with DNS server. The net logon service on the DC handles registration of SRB records for the LDA, for LDAP, I don't know why they spaced it that way, and Kerberos servers. If a DC fails to register its SRB record, you can force it to attempt to register by stopping and starting the net logon service in the services MNC. You can also manually type the appropriate commands at the command or PowerShell prompt. So for the command prompt, type net stop net logon, too many nets there, tried to read them all at once, and press enter, then type net start net logon. PowerShell restart service, and then -name net logon and press enter. So here is your example of what that looks like in your registration. Working with automatic site coverage. This is a feature in which each DC advertises itself by registering SRB records and DNS in sites that don't have a DC. if the advertising DC has the lowest cost connection to the site. This process prevents clients from using DCs located across higher cost links. Moving DCs between sites. Oh. Yeah, and if you're working anywhere that's got military and medical, and don't be surprised if you run into some really old equipment. Basic procedure for moving a DC to a new site. Verify the target site is created and has the right subnet assigned to it. Change the DC's IP address, subnet mask, and default gateway as needed for the target site. If the DC is used as DNS forwarder, make the necessary changes in the forwarder configuration on other DNS servers. If the DC hosts a delegation DNS zone, update the NS record in parent domain's DNS zone to the new IP address of the DC. If the DC being moved is preferred bridgehead server, you must make the necessary adjustments in both the current site and target site. Move the server to the target site in Active Directory sites and services. In the DNS manager, verify the SRV records are created for the DC in the target site folder. So remember how I said peer review and check stuff? That's your final. Make sure it's actually there. Active Directory replication. AD replication includes the following types of information: AD objects like OUs, user groups, and computer accounts. Changes to data held in partitions maintained by FSML role holders. Trust relationships, global catalog data, group policy information, files located in sysvol, such as group policy templates and scripts. Active Directory intra-site replication. Intra-site and inter-site replication use the same basic process to replicate Active Directory data. Intra-site replication is optimized for high-speed, low latency LAN links. Intra-site replication can be initiated in one of two ways: notification or periodic replication. Yes, kitty cat. Intra-site replication involves two main components: knowledge consistency checker and connection objects. KCC is a process that runs on every DC, and for intra-site replication builds a replication topology among DCs in a site and establishes replication partners. The KCC on each domain controller uses data stored in a forest-wide configuration directory partition to create the replication topology. Recreates the topology every 15 minutes by default. The replication topology, I'm great today. Replication topology can be recalculated manually in Active Directory sites and services. Connection objects. Connection objects define the connection parameters between two replication partners. Changes to intra-site connection objects is usually unnecessary, but changes can be made in Active Directory sites and services. General tab in Properties dialog box is only one of interest for connection objects and contains following fields. You have your change schedule, replicate from server, replicate from site, replicated naming contexts, and partially replicated naming contexts. Creating connection objects. You can create connection objects for intra-site replication if you want to alter the replication topology manually. By default, the schedule for a new connection object is set to every 15 minutes, but you can change the value. Changing the schedule for connection objects can be useful for troubleshooting replication problems. Special replication scenarios. Some changes to AD objects require special handling, called urgent replications. Urgent replication events trigger change notifications immediately. Account lockouts, changes to the account lockout policy, changes to the password policy, changes to a local security authority secret such as a trust relationship password, password change to a DC computer account, changes to the RID master DC, user account password changes. Checking replication status. Active Directory sites and services can be used to force the KCC to check the replication topology. RepAdmin.exe is a tool that will show detailed information about connections and replication status. To use, type repadmin/show REPL. So that just shows you what has been replicated. RepAdmin can also be used to show the partitions being replicated by each connection object, force replication to occur, force the KCC to recalculate the topology, and there are a couple of other actions you can do with it as well. Active Directory inter-site replication. Inter-site replication occurs between bridgehead servers. When the KCC detects that replication must occur between sites, one DC in each site is designated as the inter-site topology generator. Sorry, my cat scratched me and I'm bleeding all over the place. Or ISTG. ISTG assigns, don't stand on it, a bridgehead server for each directory partition in the site. Bridgehead servers can be designated manually. RepAdmin bridgeheads command can list which DCs in a site are acting as bridgehead servers to other sites. The repadmin bridgehead / bridgehead command can list which DCs in a site are acting as bridgehead servers to other sites, designate preferred bridgehead server in AD sites and services, find the server in the servers folder under the sites, right-click the server object and click properties, select the inter-site transport protocol in the left and add it to the this server is preferred bridgehead server for the following transports list box. So like everything else, right-click properties. And here is your example of that properties window. Inter-site transport protocols. There are two protocols that can be used to replicate between sites. You have your IP and SMTP. IP is used by default in the default IP site link, and is recommended in most cases. Simple mail transport protocol is used primarily for email and works well for slower, less reliable, or intermittent connections. The advantage of using SMTP, the DC can send multiple replication requests simultaneously without waiting for the reply. Requirements for the bridgehead servers on both ends of an SMTP configured site link. The SMTP feature must be installed on both servers. An enterprise certification authority must be configured on the network. The site link path must have a lower cost than RPC over IP site link. DCs must be configured to receive email. You would think that would be a dub since you're using an SMTP, but sometimes that's easy to forget because if you're trying to do something that isn't technically email related, but you're still using SMTP, sometimes it slips people's minds. So remember that. Site link bridges. By default, site link bridging is enabled, which makes site link transitive. You can change the transitive behavior of site links by turning off site link bridging and creating site link bridges manually. Automatic site bridging can lead to overutilization of a slower WAN link. Other reasons to create site link bridges manually are to control traffic through firewalls, accommodate partially routed network, and reduce confusion of the KCC. Sysvol replication. Some crucial information for domain operation is stored as files in Sysvol share on DCs. You have your group policy template files, ADMX central store, and logon scripts. Sysvol replication uses the same replication service as distributed file system or DFS, called distributed file system replication. Group policy replication. We're close to the end. Stay with me, guys. A group policy object is composed of group policy template, which is a collection of files stored in the Sysvol share, and a group policy container, which is an object in Active Directory stored in the AD domain partition. GPCs are replicated during normal Active Directory replication. GPTs are replicated with one of these methods. You have to do file replication service used with DCs running Windows 2003 and 2000, or DFSR, which is your distributed file system replication, is used when all DCs are running Windows Server 2008 or later. I really, really, really hope for your sanity that you guys have to not do anything but DFSR. Group policy replication continued. Because GPC and GPT use different replication methods, they can become out of sync. As long as replication services are running correctly, the most likely problem with GPO replication is a delay in clients receiving changes in policy settings, which usually occurs when multiple sites are involved. Replication problems can be diagnosed with Group Policy Management Console. And this is what that looks like. So, and you can see the different thing. Domain controllers, replication in progress. And this is in sync. And then there's the one that shows the baseline.
You could also, a few slides back, it was talking about you could manually set the sync as well, couldn't you, to diagnose an issue?
Yep, you can manually set the sync, and that is a good method for troubleshooting too. And you can also force it to sync if you absolutely have to as well. Upgrading to DFSR. If your domain includes Windows Server 2003 or older DCs, it's using FSR to replicate the sysvol. You should migrate to a more reliable DFSR as soon as possible. Before migrating from FSR to DFSR, you need to understand the migration states. So you have basically 3 states: start, prepared, redirected, and eliminated. Migrating from them is done with the DFSR MIG command line tool on a writable DC. Before beginning, do a system state backup, and I highly recommend this when you're doing anything, not just this. If you're doing a big change that you think could cause any problems, do a system state backup. Or if you have, like, we've talked about several times, virtual servers, set a restore point, do things to make your life easier in the long run. So for this one, it's WB admin start system state backup. And then there are some steps in your text for the FSR to DFSR migration. Managing replication. Administrators may need to force replication to occur for troubleshooting or testing purposes. So we have the rep admin that we talked about. So you have rep admin replicate, syncall, and KCC. For replicate, this causes replication of a specified partition from one DC to another. Syncall forces replication to occur between the specified DC and all its replication partners. And KCC causes the KCC to check the replication topology and update it if necessary. Managing replication with Active Directory sites and services. You can use AD sites and services to force replication, and KCC to check on replicated topology. So you go in there and there's your right click, replicate now. You can see that there. Monitoring replication. So there are some tools for monitoring this. You have Performance Monitor to collect Active Directory replication statistics and monitor DFSR counters. That's next one is Rep Admin, which reports the replication status of each DC, allowing you to spot potential problems for the effect operations. And then DIAG, which is diagnose, analyzes the status and overall health of Active Directory, performs replication security checks, and checks for correct DNS configuration and operations. Then there are PowerShell commandlets for monitoring and diagnosing replication problems. get AD replication connection, get AD replication failure, get AD replication partner metadata, get AD replication site, get AD replication site link, get AD replication up-to-date NES vector table. So if you're going to be doing a lot of stuff with PowerShell, this would be a nice one to add to your little cheat sheets, just so you have it there for the future. All right. That is it. So tomorrow we are doing, I'll tell you, chapter 8, which is implementing Active Directory certificate services, but it is 45 slides instead of 70 something, so it's not quite as painful. Hopefully these look like they kind of go from long to short to long to short, so hopefully they will not, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, hopefully they will not be all crammed together in one shot there. So yeah, my brain was not ready to give today's lecture either. That's why I kept stuttering along. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.